we're going to get into the session today, and just really happy to have Maeve join us today. And I'll tell you, I ran into to Maeve at a conference, and she was putting on this this amazing experiential event. It was a whole room at the conference, and I was like, we're trying to put on this experiential event. I gotta have it there, and we were all excited about it. And then the COVID-19 outbreak hit, and so we shifted gears, and so we're completely changing gears and doing something, the same topic and same idea, but in a completely different, almost more innovative format, I think. And so I'm really excited to have her here today to present to you guys. If you have questions for her, you can put them in the question and answer section in the webinar. The chat room is a little bit difficult for her to see, so put them in the Q&A and she'll get to those. If you have questions for Dave or myself and technical stuff, you can put them in the chat room. All right, and with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Maeve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for Dave and Glenn. I tend to be what I call a high maintenance presenter, whether I'm in person or virtual or a webinar. I require a lot of help and support. So thank you, and hopefully I won't mess up too much in doing it. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see that. And once again, if you don't mind speaking up, Maeve, it's a little muffled.
Okay. All right, I will speak up as much as I can, and if you can't hear me, please stop me and let me know. I wanted to stop my video so it's not in the way, so I don't know if that's happening or not.
Yep, that's good. We can see the whole presentation, so yeah, you're good.
Got it. Okay, good. Well, thank you all. Thank you for being here. This is certainly very unusual times. I was seeing in the Q&A or the chat, some of my friends have joined, so thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to be together during these strange times and to spend some time just doing what I love to do and spending you know, effort and attention on what we normally do. So it's been a nice kind of reprieve the last few days focusing on this. I am Maeve O'Neill. I'm a licensed clinician, and as you can see, I've got some credentials as a licensed counselor, chemical dependency counselor. I'm also a certified in healthcare compliance professional, which is my newest qualification, and I'll tell you more about that as we go throughout our time together. And my most proud credential is that I am certified as a Dare to Lead facilitator in Brené Brown's resilience and leadership work. And that's really what you're going to hear a lot about today, because I think about the wholehearted journey to ethics and compliance. For me, what it really is finding a new and different way of looking at ethics. I'm guessing a lot of you are on this call today because you agree that we're sort of an ethical crisis in our industry, maybe in the world in general, but certainly in our industry, there's a lot going on. And I think this is a fresh, new, and different way of looking at the lens of compliance and ethics. And maybe it's actually a solution that we can work together to make a difference in ethics. I've been in this industry my whole life, 30 years. I've worked in behavioral health. I always say it's all I've ever done. For 30 years, I spent the first 10 years in direct service. I worked in psychiatric hospitals, in programs, in schools, in communities as a direct care provider. I spent 10 years in management where I got to oversee intensive outpatient program, residential programs, running some private practices. In the last 10 years, I've spent in executive leadership in many different organizations, from private, nonprofit, community-based programs, and I've really seen a lot of good and a lot of concerning things in those 30 years. So the journey you're going to hear about today is my journey from being in all those experiences, doing a lot of great, wonderful work, making a lot of mistakes, I think, and screwing up a lot, and then now being able to see it from the lens of we can do better, I can do better, and hopefully together we can do better. And my dream is that we become a place, an industry where compliance is everywhere. It's the way that we do business, but compliance doesn't have to be the boring rules and regulations. It can just be who we are and how we are. And you see there my Chief Heart Officer, which is my dream job title, which I hope to get to at some point. Right now, I'm the Chief Regulatory Officer for Rogers Behavioral Health. We're a large nonprofit in 8 different states, providing all levels of care to all populations. So I'm very lucky to be there and very excited to share kind of how I use this work in my daily life there.
pressing the advanced button, but it's not moving. There we go. Okay, so why this is a journey for me is because I think sometimes early on in my career, I saw ethics as sort of what you do or what you don't do. I didn't see it as a holistic way that I see it now. So I really see ethics as a journey that we have to be able to talk about and live on a daily basis. We have to layer on top of that our resilience to deal with when things aren't ethical or when we're in a bad situation or things aren't going well. And then how do we layer in there all the compliance things that we can do from a programmatic level to prevent, find, and fix issues before maybe they become an ethical dilemma or a crisis like we're in now. So the agenda today, we're going to go through kind of the basic standards and ethics stuff that we all probably are familiar with, how they apply to us as professionals, teams, and organizations. And then we're going to talk about kind of how I apply Brené Brown's work from early on. I was lucky enough to be trained in her work in 2014, and it just changed my life completely. Personally, professionally, her resilience concepts, learning how to view the world differently, how to mess up and come back from that, how to figure out how to belong and where to belong. I started applying all of that to myself as an individual, as a parent, as a partner, as a leader. And her latest book, Dare to Lead, really brought it where now we have actually a curriculum, a 16-hour curriculum in Dare to Lead that we can use in our organizations, I think, to build resilience and build ethical and compliant programs in very innovative and creative ways. So first, let me ask you all a couple of questions. And normally, if I was in person doing this with you, I love to be interactive. I love to see your faces, your smiles, your questions, your comments. So I don't get to do that today, but let's just think about for a couple minutes these three questions. Have you ever in your career in this field burned out? If you could see me, my hand is up, both hands are up. I burned out close to 7 years ago. And when I burned out, it was something I did not expect, think was going to happen to me. And now every day is an effort to not burn out again. So we'll apply these concepts to burnout, because when we are burning out or we're already burnt out and we're with other people who are burned out, I think that's the breeding ground for ethical crises. And that's where we have to kind of start and deal with that. And my second question is, have you ever worked in a team of people where there was communication problems? Maybe the therapists don't talk well to the nurses don't talk well to the techs, the techs don't talk well to the drivers don't like the kitchen staff. You know, it's sort of this ongoing issue of we don't communicate, we don't get along, maybe we don't help each other. There's conflict or drama, gossip, negativity between team members. You could see me, both hands, both feet are up, right? That's what happens. I've worked in many of those places, and I've been part of the problem in some of those places, and that's what I'm hoping we can do differently. And the third question I have for you, have you ever worked in an organization that was unhealthy or toxic? And I always love this question live in the room, because people kind of look around and think, uh-oh, should I raise my hand? Or some people jet up both hands real quick and, oh my gosh, yes. Being in this industry for 30 years, I have worked in several organizations that were unhealthy, and I too have contributed to unhealthiness and toxic environment and culture in some places that I have worked. So I regret that a lot, and I am dedicated to the next 30 years to help make a difference in that, to not be part of it, and in fact, to contribute and demand healthy organizations that help our people to not burn out, help our teams to be helpful and supportive of each other, and then to have healthy, resilient organizations. And that's sort of what I'm working towards. When I did this presentation a couple years ago at an executives conference, I asked them that question. I said, I asked first, what is your census today? And they could all tell me their census. And then I asked them, what is your rate that you get paid for your patient daily rate? And they could all tell me that. And then I asked them, what's your turnover rate of your staff? And most of them couldn't tell me. They said, well, that's an HR issue. You'll have to ask HR. And then I said, well, how many of your staff are burning out? They didn't know that number or what their morale was in their organization. And I believe unless we know how healthy and good our staff are, I don't know how we know what the patient numbers are, because our staff determine those patient numbers. If you've got a census crisis or a turnover crisis, AMAs, incidents happening, those ethical things that happen in our programs, you've got to look back at your staff and say, what's going on with our people? It's our people that are in crisis. And that's where hopefully we can apply our attention and our time to help them to be better and to get better. So before we jump into some of the material here, I always like to give a bit of a disclaimer. The truth will set you, but first it might piss you off. I have learned over the last few years as I give this talk, and I've given this talk in 1-hour chunks over time. I've given it up to 7 hours at a NADAC conference a couple years ago. And as I said, the Dare to Lead curriculum is a 16-hour curriculum. So I've done this in small pieces and huge pieces. And in all of those, there's always someone in the crowd that I can tell sort of doesn't sit well with the information. And I had one wonderful person a couple years ago who said to me, you know, Maeve, when you were sitting there presenting, I liked what you were saying. I agreed with you. I was thinking about my bosses and my coworkers and my wife at home and how you're right about all of them. And then I got home and realized, oh my gosh, she means me. I'm the one that has to change. I'm the one that has to do something differently. And he said to me, I was so mad at you because I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be everybody else and everything else besides me. So I always just suggest in this presentation, our time together today, if you get upset or have a feeling or a thought, please ask, please share. You'll have my contact information. You can always reach out to me. Part of the process is change, is uncomfortability. And in that is sometimes things that we look at ourselves that we could do differently, but that means we're changing and maybe we're getting better. So knowing that this might be a little bit uncomfortable, I always like to start out with a little bit of a regulation process for us. And as Brené Brown teaches us in our Dare to Lead curriculum, her research showed that yogi people and the Navy SEALs all use this type of box breathing to help them regulate and prepare for relaxation and or combat wartime. So I think it applies to us in the time that we're in. So I would love it if you would indulge me in a short meditation process where we can kind of get ourselves ready to soak in some more information. And we'll use, you'll see there that visual of the box breathing, which is a very intentional way of paying attention to our breath and focusing on our breath, where you inhale for about 3 counts, then you hold it for 3 counts, exhale for 3 counts, and hold for 3 counts again. Keep that breath pattern going. You can watch the dot going around, or if you're willing and able, you can close your eyes. And we're going to do a short meditation to focus on all our senses in our bodies to get ready for this information. So as you sit in your chair, hopefully you're sitting comfortably, doing your box breathing. Let's first just focus on our body, how our body's feeling in the chair. Maybe our feet are on the floor, our legs are on the chair, our arms could be in our lap or on the chair as well. And just pay attention to any tension in your body or things that are uncomfortable, and see if you can kind of soften there and just relax a little bit. Box breath in, hold, exhale, and hold again. Another inhale for 3 counts. And next, focus on your ears. What sounds do you have around you? What are you hearing? Maybe it's the sound of my voice, too loud, too soft. Maybe there's a fan or air conditioner in the room you're in. Maybe you're working from home like the rest of us and you've got some wonderful kids or pets in the background. What do you hear around you, and what sounds are pleasant, or what can you tune out if it's not pleasant? Another big box breath in, hold, exhale, and hold again. And next, focus on the taste in your mouth. Maybe you've got some mint or gum. Maybe you've got coffee or tea or something from breakfast. What are you tasting in your mouth or the roof of your mouth that might be pleasant, something to focus on? And inhale, hold again, exhale, hold again. And next, let's focus on your sense of smell. Maybe there's something around you that smells nice. Maybe you've got a candle or incense or oils burning, or maybe someone near you, or you have some cologne or perfume on that's really pleasant and nice. Let's just focus on that. Take our last inhale, holding, exhale, and holding. And next, as you open your eyes, I ask you to put your hand over your heart and just open up your mind and heart to this information we're going to get today. Even if it makes us uncomfortable, hopefully you'll get something out of it that feels new and different, and we together can work together to change the ethical crisis that we're in. I hope you enjoy that breathing exercise. One of the reasons I like to do it is because I think a lot of times that we get into ethical problems in our industry is because we do a pretty good job of telling other people what to do. We teach our patients maybe how to breathe or to do yoga or meditation or to get massages, all the things that we kind of talk about to be well. But we, as helping professionals, sometimes don't do those things. In fact, we might do the opposite. So my first opportunity to piss you off here might be to say that sometimes we're a bit hypocritical in the work that we do. And my challenge is that we reconcile that. Let's practice what we preach. Let's do all of these things. When I was burning out, I didn't do box breathing and I didn't meditate like I do every day now. And I wasn't practicing yoga like I do now. And I wish I had done that. I wish I had taken those opportunities to learn and do things that I knew were good for other people and certainly good for myself. So as Brené Brown tells us, we can't take people professionally where we're not willing to go personally. I think we have to look at ourselves and say, what am I doing that's contributing to my wellness and the people around me and to my organization? And you'll see a picture there of my children, Aiden and Delaney. You'll hear a lot about them today, because when I think about my journey to ethics, I think it is because of them that I am where I am and how I've survived and maintained where I've come to, because they have challenged me along the way. They've inspired me along the way. And part of what Brené teaches us is to kind of own our story in life and in our resilience journey. So you'll hear them in parts of my journey and how they've helped me to be a better person, a better parent, and a better professional and a better leader, which I then think incorporates into being a better ethical person as well. And here's where I was just saying a little bit ago, the real challenge for me is that we have to do all three of these things. Oftentimes we find people that are really ethical and wonderful, good people would never do anything wrong. And then we might have teams of people that really work hard. Even in our own experiences, we might have really great teams of people we worked with, but we work with other people who aren't so ethical or aren't so focused on compliance. And then there's organizations that are doing wonderful, good work and others that aren't. Or maybe in an organization, they're doing some good work, but it's very easy to drift to not good work, right? It's sort of a daily activity to stay focused on ethics and integrity and values. The minute you drift off, you kind of go down a dark path. So my challenge to us is that we constantly, all the time, have to do all three of these. When I first started doing this presentation about 5 years ago, I called it Wounded Healer to Worthy Helper, because what I was identifying was we weren't well people and I wanted us to get better. And someone said to me, Maeve, stop calling that, because no one wants to admit that we're not well. And she said, call it ethics, because that's what it is. And I realized at that moment she was right. These resilience tools and all these activities that Brené has given us are really ways to be ethical within ourselves and all the circles that we work in. So the first place to look is us as individuals, as professionals. We have to be willing, able, and ready to look at ourselves and what are we doing on a regular basis to be ethical, to not be part of the problem, but to be part of the solution. And I have a cute picture there of my daughter's work. If many of you are parents like I am and play therapy with your children like I do, maybe you had the same experience that I've had. Usually when I'm in person and having these presentations, I tell you lots of fun stories. I'm trying to pare them down. I can't give you the full feel of the story, but what I can tell you is in one of my therapy sessions, my daughter turned this piece of paper to me, which I think we would call it a treatment plan, which is her telling me to not burn out again. This is what I should do. I should meditate. I should FaceTime my children, practice yoga, do puzzles, and practice gratitude, which to me was quite eye-opening that at the age of 10, she could give me this advice when at the age of 10, I couldn't have given that to you. Probably at the age of 30, I probably couldn't have given it to you because I was on the grind, right? I was going and moving up in my career and my qualifications and doing all this stuff leading to burnout. So the fact that I could offer that to my child, I think shows that this can be done when we are very intentional and careful about doing it differently. Because what I didn't tell you earlier, I forgot to mention is I come from a family mired by addiction. I grew up with two alcoholic parents who struggle with mental health issues as well. So I was your typical adult child. I'm going to save the world, going to do it all right, which is why I came into this industry. And I believed at the time, having overcome that, there'd be no problem I couldn't overcome in this industry, right? And then you start seeing the ethical stuff and you start experiencing things that are uncomfortable, and you've got to find some new skill sets. And that's what for me was so transformational with Brené's work, was it gave me the tools to be resilient, to look at the world in a different way, and to hopefully do it differently. And Delaney's treatment plan to me shows that it can be done. It can be different. And then we have to, once we're in a place that we're open, we have to work in teams that are open, honest, open, and willing to talk about this stuff, to have these hard conversations, to challenge each other, to look at each other, and to maybe question when we're not doing the right thing, you know, when we're not doing the best that we can, when we see ourselves drifting, how do we pull each other back to where we want to be? I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan, and that visual of his golden circle there helps me also focus a lot on why are we doing what we're doing? If a lot of us came into this field because our own wounds or our own issues from childhood or growing up experiences, and we haven't sort of dealt with how it impacts us today, we can make that worse for ourselves, the people around us, the people that work for us, in our organizations, in our industry. We can make a big negative impact or a positive impact. So I do believe if we apply this information, it can be very positive. And then as organizations, we have to create environments that we know how to talk, trust, and feel. The kit of the picture there was a kit I got to be part of developing when I worked at the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. I got to work with Jerry Moe. This is back in like 1998. We did a call for programs. What do you all do for kids in your programs? And we developed this beautiful kit. And it's still available at samhsa.gov. Children's program kit. You can still get it today. It doesn't come in quite the big, beautiful box because of budget cuts, but it does come with all sessions for school age, middle and high school kids and their parents of how to help kids in addicted families. And what I realized is we did a lot of work back then to develop these kits and these best practices and tools. But where is our toolkit for being a healthy organization? Where is our curriculum or our agenda for doing it? And that's what I think has been missing in our organizations. But luckily, I do believe that Brené Brown's Dare to Lead is the solution to that. What she has discovered in all the years of her resilience research is that leadership, courageous leadership, daring leadership is actually measurable, observable, and teachable skill set that we can all learn. And when we learn it and practice it, I believe that is when we are ethical and we are compliant, because we're being vulnerable, which means we're looking at things all the time from that lens of how do I take care of myself and people around us. We're living within our values, right? Ethics are values. Being really clear about what our values are and when we're in them or when we're drifting away from them. When we're building trust in ourselves, in our organizations, with our people that work with us, and then rising, which is when we screw up, which we will have ethical questions and dilemmas and problems. There's no way not to in the work that we do. We'll learn how to rise above it and come out of it actually better and stronger when we're using all the things that she talks about there. And here's what I think we need to stop doing. And I use the visual of the stop sign because this became very clear to me several years ago when I worked for an organization that was probably one of the most unhealthy ones that I had ever worked in. And I've been in several. I forgot to mention earlier in my work history, I've done a lot of consulting. So I've been in many, many different programs. I was a Joint Commission surveyor for a while. So I've probably been in literally hundreds of programs, and I've seen good, healthy ones, and I've seen ones that are really not. This one was in the top few of toxicity and unhealthiness because it was left to fester for so many years and so many changes in leadership. And there I was as the new leader. They didn't want me there. They weren't open to this. Until one day, one of the people in the program decided he was going to give me a chance. He said, you know what, I kind of like you, Maeve. I think I know what you're doing, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you kind of turn this around. So one day, someone approached him to do what a lot of us do. We gossip and we complain and we vent to other people. Someone came to him to vent about something I had said or done, and he put his hand up and he said to her, stop. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to give Maeve a chance, and I'm going to try to help her to make this difference, because we need the help, right? We're not a good group of people. We're doing some bad stuff. We're good people. We're just making some bad choices. And that person then came to me to complain about him, not letting her complain about me, right? That was sort of the toxicity there. So we have to look at this and stop certain things. And the list is there, but we have to stop. Stop the blame and shame. When we catch ourselves pointing the finger at the other department or the other people or at the bosses, stop that and look at ourselves. A lot of shaming things we do in our industry that are very hurtful to ourselves and to each other and to ourselves as an industry, the reputation. People don't send their loved ones to treatment because they see the Google reviews or the legal charges or people going to jail. And I think that's all of us. We all can contribute to stopping that shame. The burn and churn, the turnover rate. Think about how many of us have been in organizations who have constant turnover, who have constant people being let go for no reason. Maybe the budget, maybe they just didn't perform. But that burn and churn, it hurts us. It hurts all of us. We have to look at that. The command and control leadership that I was brought up on, that I then did, doesn't work. And in fact, it's very damaging. And it feeds into, I think, the turnover and the morale and the burnout. So we have to look at all those pieces, I think, and do it differently. That's our way out of the ethical crisis that we're in and what we're going to need to do to keep it, to maintain the changes. So again, another list of questions for you all to think about. Here's a list of behaviors that you might see in your treatment center. So I ask you to kind of think about these behaviors and then think about what you would do in response. If people in your program were using substances, maybe there was a time of not using and a relapse, sexual activity with clients or with staff, pornography, weapons, destruction of property, dishonesty, lying, stealing. Someone from home calls and says, hey, so-and-so in your program is violent at home. Threats of self to harm or others, name calling, disrespect, bullying, gossip. These are behaviors in programs. And I usually ask when I'm live in a crowd, what would you do? And I get great answers like update the treatment plan, discharge, send to higher level of care, all these great ideas, until someone in the room usually says, wait, are these patient behaviors or staff behaviors? And that's when the aha moment happens, right? These are staff behaviors that I have dealt with in the last 10 years as executive leadership. These things happen with patients. We expect it. That's what they pay us for. But when it's our staff, we have missed an opportunity to either hire the right people, retain the right people, train the right people, or have an environment that this was not an option. So I think this is the crisis and what we have to do differently if we're going to avoid these behaviors. And then I always ask, well, why is this happening? Why are our staff doing these things? How does this actually happen? And many of you may have heard of ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, which to me was new after I burned out and sort of dug into the research. What is going on here? Why is this happening to me in our industry? And the ACEs survey gives us that answer, that when things happen to us as children before the age of 18, usually in the first 3 to 6 years of life, it changes our brains. It changes our view of the world. And then we go into environments that maybe add to those ACEs, right? Or make it worse. And then we work in organizations that may add to it and make it worse. So we have to kind of recognize that. There's a survey you can go to at acestoohigh.org. You can take the survey, the 10 questions. Because what I found is our patients have all the ACEs, obviously, right? Again, that's what they pay us for. But I started doing it with the staff that I worked with, and our staff also have usually 8 out of 10 of the 10 ACEs. It's only 4 or more that you have to say you've been through to show that you will then have adverse consequences as an adult from a health perspective, from a mental health perspective. This impacts who we are and how we are in the work that we do. And this is Brené's idea of a wholehearted self. If we're going to overcome those ACEs, we've got to be really aware of doing things differently. Our thinking, our feeling, and our behavior. All the 3 parts of the stool have to be there. And when I got all this information, I realized, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with us. I called Bill White, who you all know is a guru in our industry, historian, wonderful contributor to our organization. I called him and I said, Bill, I think I have this amazing revelation that we are the problem, that we as a behavioral health workforce are not well. And he kind of laughed at me. He said, yeah, Maeve, I wrote a book back in 1987 called The Incestuous Workplace. He said, you should go read that and tell me what you think. And I did, and he was right. What he says in that book is that we as individuals become casualties in distressed organizations. We self-destruct in the face of excessive demands, demands of a high census, of long hours, of difficult acute patients, never mind a COVID or coronavirus, but everything every day, we try to do all these demands and we self-destruct in that process. And organizations can do harm to themselves, leaders, and to the people in the public if we don't address this and plan for it. There's a NADAC publication that actually says if we as an organization don't prevent burnout as an organization, we are unethical. And I think that's part of this. We have to do it differently for and with our people. Because if we don't, we have those brains, right? We have these bodies that are carrying those ACEs and those traumas and that fear and the burnout in our bodies coming to work every day. The picture on the bottom right there is the heart room that Glenn talked about. I have been campaigning for the last few years that every conference we go to should have a heart room, a place where we can go and regulate and meditate and relax. And that was our first one in San Antonio last summer. It was an amazing experience. The first couple of days or day or so, no one came in. By the second day, people were kind of milling around. By the end of that second day, the room was filled with people meditating, relaxing, doing yoga, sleeping. It was just wonderful. We all need those kind of spaces. And then I saw recently in the left-hand corner there, you see a Calm booth. There are organizations that have these booths. It's like a telephone booth where you can go in and do some short meditations throughout the day to help regulate. I would love to see this in every behavioral health organization, a place that we dedicate to staff to help them regulate that brain chemistry, to be well, to take care of themselves, and maybe even carve it into their schedule. Maybe it's a required thing we do every day to make sure that we're being well. Because we're pretty good about when people come to work with us, they sign a code of conduct, right? You probably have a new employee orientation. You probably had them sign things saying, here's my competence level. I know confidentiality. We all know what that is between HIPAA and 42 CFR. We're all signing off that we know that. We're getting that training. We know what boundaries are okay, what relationships to have or not to have, how and who to self-disclose. There's dress code rules. There's gifts and social media rules, informed consent, advertising, hiring practices. There's a lot of things that we look for and try to work on. We have to figure out how to make sure that in all of those, we've got the consistent message of we care for you and we're here to support and change that if it's needed. And then we have to look at our team ethical practices. You may have some really good training and information, but how do people actually use it? How are the rules and regulations implemented at your program? Do patients know their rights and responsibilities? Do we all document and record keep the way that we're supposed to? What relationships are discussed both within the team and with patients or former patients? And how do you resolve ethical dilemmas? Who do you go to? How do you manage that? I've been lucky the last 3 or 4 years, I've maintained the employee compliance hotline, which is a wonderful tool, and hopefully every organization has one, where we can call in anonymously or report who we are, the issues, the problems, and then see a quick resolution to it, and we get better and we change because of it. That's the goal. And then organizationally, what policies and procedures kind of drive the care? Oftentimes we have a policy manual that sits on the shelf and maybe no one looks at it, or looks at it once a year or every 3 years when the accrediting body comes around. But if a good compliance program, a good compliance officer makes sure that your standards and your policies are what you do, and you look at those every day. Hopefully you open them every day and say, how do I do a admission or a drug search or a discharge? Whatever it is, it should be in practice, and we should all do it consistently, predictably, in order to stay within what the right thing to do is for quality and safety. Because I often will, I'm on a lot of those chat groups about ethics and problems, and people will say, well, they should report to Joint Commission or call the state. Those are great guidelines, and the information is there if we use it, but if we don't look at it and incorporate it into our work, we're missing the chance to do good care. Having been a former Joint Commission surveyor, those are good standards. Of course, we all kind of joke about preparing for them and how hard it is. But the reality is if we use those, we will be better programs and we'll get better ethical results because of it. And I love this old graphic I pulled up from my many years ago training in ethics. that we need effective guidance. We have to have policy that drives supervision and training and peer support. But look at that bottom blue area. I don't think I got this till recently. The important part of ethics is who we are, our boundaries, our ethics, who we come to work as every day, before the stress of the day even kicks in. So that's where I think we need more attention to ourselves and the people around us to make sure that that is always the best. And in supervision, in our teams, we have to be able to talk about this stuff, right? That we have power in the work that we do. We have to be healthy. I oftentimes in the large group of these kind of presentations, I'll say, how many of you get weekly supervision? Usually maybe half the room does. Some people haven't had supervision in years. Without that kind of help and support, how do you have a plan to get better, to use ethical dilemmas in healthy and good ways to get better? And as organizations, it's complicated. I just don't think it's as simple as do the right thing or, someone made a bad choice. Who we are as people, laws, regulations, the policy and procedures, and when looking at it, what our personal beliefs are, and then the culture, they all come together, and it's not always easy to unpack. Okay, what do we do here? What precedent are we setting? What have we done in the past, right? There's a lot of long and difficult conversations that had to be had to prevent ethical problems. And then if we see them cropping up, how are we going to intervene early? And then of course, on the back end, when it does happen, how do we respond in a way that protects our people, our patients, and our staff, as well as the organization? And here's a beautiful graphic, again, from Dare to Lead, from Brené Brown's work. And I love that we kind of start in the bottom right side there, that, we all come into this world and into this field, I think, of behavioral health with uncertainty, fear, anxiety, shame, scarcity. We want to get to a place of love and belonging and joy. To get to the other side, which are all the resilience tools that we're building in her curriculum. And I love that it ends in ethical decision making. When we use these tools, we will be more resilient. We'll be able to reset in bad situations, but it takes a lot of work and attention to get there. And that's a transformative effect of the work that we do in Dare to Lead. And it starts with giving ourselves permission to kind of not know the answers, permission to be uncertain, or permission even to screw it up, to make a mistake sometimes, to admit that we don't know and we have to reach out for help. So I envision this world where we have safe places to say, I'm not sure, or I don't know, or what would you do? As a leader early on, I think I thought I had to know everything and have all the answers, and very critical and judgmental if I didn't know the right answer or people around me didn't do everything perfectly all the time. I was recovering from my perfectionistic side. So this visual reminds me that we have to create that container of safety, which we do really well with the patients that we work with, right? We tend to build rapport and get to talk to people and, sort of take time to get to know them well and what they are and what they need. But with our teams and with our people, we have to look at how are we doing that? What does that look like in our daily huddles or our staff meetings? Brené teaches us in the curriculum to start every meeting with a quick gratitude check. It's really that simple. What are we grateful for? What are our team doing that we need to be able to express in gratitude? Because when we're not in gratitude or being safe, these are the things that are getting in the way, right? We're not talking about people's fears and feelings or having those tough discussions. We kind of get stuck in the war stories or the setbacks. The shame and blame comes up again, or perfectionism like I used to do. I used to be fearful of failure and therefore driving perfectionism, which wasn't a kind or courageous way to be with the people that I worked with. And here we get to go back to, I think, the basis of whole living and parenting, which is, I always ask in the room, how many of us grew up in a perfect family? Very few hands go up. If one or two do, we usually dive into it. Well, it wasn't perfect, but our challenges were dealt with well, right? We all grew up in homes that probably could have been better and could have served us well. So we get a chance in our organizations now to create places that people do feel safe and they feel loved and cared for, and individually seeing who they are and what their contribution is, which again isn't being perfect, but bringing their true selves to work every day. And I love this checklist of giving feedback. If we're in a supervisory or leadership role, are we willing to sit across from people, kind of own the problem, put it in front of us, ask questions? one of the huge skill sets we build in Dare to Lead is curiosity, being more curious than certain or judging or even coaching, but just curious. How do we help? How do we support? What can we do different? And then the biggest challenge, how do we model that to the people around us? How do we show that we're vulnerable and open if we want them to be that way as well? So it's a leadership challenge for us to be able to do that. And this leadership manifesto, I love this because a lot of times, I think early on in my career, I thought, well, my bosses aren't doing this. They're not going to do it. Why should I have to do it? But we don't have to wait for our bosses, whether they're in the world or in our organizations, to do the right thing. We want them to inspire us and to take risks with us and engage us. But if they don't, let's find those little pockets of people that we can do these things with on our team or maybe in our little part of the world. Let's build these communities of people where we're all working hard to do this work, even when it gets uncomfortable or difficult. And this visual to me is the original Wholehearted Living guidepost from Daring Greatly, which to me is sort of my daily path of which way am I going to go? I have the choice of being perfectionistic or critical or certainty or trying to control everything, or I can cultivate the ones on the right side. Just being authentic, compassionate, resilient. It's a crossroads every time, every interaction, every choice we make is choosing one or the other. So hopefully we choose to the right a little more often when we're doing this work. But as Brené teaches us, it's not like it's a got it done. It's a daily, minute by minute practice sometimes of, okay, I didn't do it right this time. And it starts with vulnerability, which is not something I don't think a lot of us like to talk about. And I love this graphic I actually just found last night. In this time of our crisis, our staff are incredibly vulnerable if they're working in behavioral health care with patients and other people all day long. Uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure is what we're signing up for. So that is scary for a lot of people. So where are we creating the time to talk about that before it leads to an ethical crisis or burnout or people just leaving the industry, right? We can get ahead of it if we're willing to carve out the time to talk about it. And it starts again with those values. We do a lot of work in values, owning what our values are, and we use the image of the lantern to help us guide there. These are my values, the lantern's lighting the way. When do I know if I'm veering off? When I worked for organizations that weren't ethical and I stood up and said, hey, this isn't okay, that's scary, a very scary time. But what if I don't do that? What is the consequence? What's going to happen to me, the organization, our industry? We also spend a lot of time in trust building because without trust, it's hard to have ethics, right? And we break down into trust into these 7 really specific behaviors that we look for. Do people set boundaries? Are they reliable? Do they do what they say they're going to do? Are they accountable? When they screw up, do they say it? The vault is one of the things that I have found incredibly helpful to me because I have experienced so much of our tendency in our industry to gossip, to focus on negative, to tell war stories, to talk about each other rather than to each other. So the vault is the story, the value that if it's not your story to tell, then don't tell it, right? If you're going to say something about someone, say it to them. That's the goal, to be in integrity, to be non-judgmental. And generosity is my all-time favorite, which is people are doing the best that they can. I don't think anyone comes into our industry and wants to be unethical, wants to get into trouble. We're struggling and we're challenged, but everyone truly is doing the best that they can. And the whole rising piece is when we mess up, how do we get back up? How do we reckon with the choices that were made, the things that happen, rumbling with the emotions of that, the fear, the anxiety, the sorrow, the grief, all those pieces. And the revolution is the change behavior. What are we going to do different now? What lessons have we learned that now we can get better at without being afraid of being in trouble or being written up or being fired? But this is a constant process of improvement, right? Of getting better and doing things differently. And these are 3 of probably my favorite visuals that we do in Dare to Lead. Being clear, who we are is how we lead, and we cannot be silent about hard things. If people are burning out, we should talk about it. If teams aren't healthy, we should be confronting it. And if our organization is toxic, hopefully we're naming it and we're doing something to change it. in my usual presentations live in person, I love to tell you stories about my childhood and growing up and kind of how I got to here, which to me is an ethical piece, because early on in my career, I could give a presentation about ethics or clinical care or whatever it is, but I spoke very much from my head. You know, here's the theory, here's the technique, here's what we do, rather than from the heart as to who we are and how we got here. And I grew up, as I said, with two well-meaning, wonderful parents who were mired in addiction. We spent the formative years in New Orleans, the French Quarter there, and there I am on the left as a budding social worker, right? We all come to this with those stories, and part of the work is to owning our stories and then hopefully rewriting the ending so that now we know we've got control of that and what it looks like. And early on, I remember being in 11th grade of high school when I first read Nakoa's the 3 C's we had first, right? That I didn't cause, control, or cure these problems. And later on, we added the other 4 C's. I can take care of myself, communicate my feelings, make healthy choices, and celebrate me. What I learned in that 11th grade psychology class applies to us in ethics, right? We have to be able to own the part that we can to change this, which is having these dialogues, having these conversations, not trying to control everything or avoid things, but actually contributing to the conversation and making it better. And I told you I would tell you more about Aiden and Delaney. These are my children now. We obviously live in my son is a football player, and there he is with one of his little buddies. He's a great leader on his football team. And I think it's because of the environment that we've created, which is about authenticity and vulnerability. And it's okay to be that and still be a pretty cool football player. And my daughter Delaney there, she is a soccer basketball player and tough as nails, who challenges me every day to be better and stronger, and looking for those inspirations in our lives, to be clear what my why is and what my call to courage is. And they have taught me too that a big part of ethics sometimes is just that lack of connection. People are unethical when they don't feel connected to a healthy, good organization, so they connect to the unhealthy parts of it, right? So with my children, I was very intentional about connection and love and all those things. I want to be that same way as a leader and as part of an organization. We have to contribute that as well. We do a lot of talk in our industry about self-care, and I don't like that term self-care, because what I see when I hear that is pointing the finger and telling people, go take care of yourselves on your time and then come back and work for us. And I feel like we have to change that to an idea that well care. We are working together to make it well. Another chance I have now to maybe piss you off is, I think it's important to look at ourselves in the places that we work. How do we show that we are well? Are we, you know, when I was burning out, I was drinking 3 or 4 Red Bulls a day just to stay kind of, you know, jacked up enough to get through the day. That wasn't healthy. Probably should have drank more water, maybe less sugar, less caffeine, right? We do a lot of unhealthy things in our intake and our environment and our surroundings that are not well inducing. So we had to ask ourselves that and really look at that, and maybe take less smoke breaks, maybe take less, you know, sugary foods into the office and other healthier options that might actually help us regulate and take care of ourselves, rather than just going and hustling to get through the day. And then I love this old visual when I used to teach parenting classes. This is an overhead projector screen, that everyone's different. And we have to, I think, appreciate in our organizations, we've got people who are brave and strong and confident. We've got ones who are more sensitive and maybe scared and hesitant. And we don't have to all be the same person. How do we help each other to grow and develop and really know, who are we? Where are we at? What stresses do we have? Especially in these times, with the times we're living in, who's been affected by the virus? Who has people at home who are immunocompromised and need special attention or care? How do we really support and help them, not just demand that they get the work done? Because when we're not taking care of our staff are putting up these moving away, moving toward, or moving against. This is that fight, flight, freeze response. And we see it in ourselves or in our staff if we're not doing the things that we could be doing in courageous, daring leadership. This is an example of a marble jar where we try to build trust. It's marbles in the jar. We get people to believe that we're here for them and support them. And hopefully when we do that, people will do better for themselves and for each of us. When we don't do that, this is that armored heart, right? This is us showing up to work not focused on our patients. Maybe we're just there to get a paycheck. Maybe we're just there to get through the day. But if fear and ego and greed are running an organization or running the people in the organization, this is what we get. We have to open up that heart and help people to be able to do it differently. And then I think we get better ethics. Another great Simon Sinek quote and little book, Together is Better, is a little children's book for adults, for team members. And it's the whole story of bullies in the playground, not letting some kids play on the playground. And it's all about bullying in the workplace. And we look at ethical crises, what impact does bullying have? If people don't feel safe talking or sharing or asking for help due to bullies, due to people not being part of the organization, not belonging or fitting in, that's what happens. So how do we challenge ourselves to be perfect for ourselves and for our company, and building those perfect teams, not waiting for someone else to build it for us? Brené's curriculum is all about the arena, all the arenas that we live and work in. We step into the arena and we're going to battle sometimes, battle for ourselves, battle for doing the right thing, for good ethics to happen. And in that arena, scarcity comes up. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to have a job? Am I going to be the best? Am I going to get to the promotion? Comparison, am I good enough? Am I good as that person? Is that person a better leader or therapist or staff than me? And of course, shame gets 2 seats, right? We have to kind of name where shame is in our organizations, how it shows up, and then we can fix it and hopefully look at things we can do better. And the biggest, most important seats in that arena, the ones we have to build and focus on, are empathy and self-compassion. How do we show that and display empathy and self-compassion at all times? Here's an example of a marble jar board that I built at one of my programs to slow everybody down, to thank people who showed up in their marble jar, who earned trust for them, or what did they do to get in someone else's marble jar. Just a great visual to say, yeah, here's what we're doing. And every month I would take down the notes and I would share them with all of our staff to inspire them to do more of those moments and to appreciate them. Empathy looks like a lot of things: perspective taking, not judgmental, knowing what emotions we're in and sharing that, and of course, practicing mindfulness. And same thing with self-compassion, self-kindness. The idea that common humanity is that we're all in this together. There's no one that has all this, controlled and no fear of all this. And mindfulness comes up again, which is why, again, I think we have to build organizations that practice mindfulness. Maybe open every single meeting with a meditation or a mindfulness practice, or closing the day, or each shift change, finding ways to be mindful and passionate, all those places. And this is an example of love. I have often shared at places that I've worked, I don't think we use the word love enough in our organizations. And this was a little heart with the word love on it that was given to me by a prior supervisor that I had, who I wasn't terribly proud when I left that organization, because my ego and my pride got in the way of being the best person I could be at that organization. But we stayed in touch, and just a couple years ago, she met me at a conference and wanted to talk to me, and she gave me this as a token of her love for me and seeing the journey that I've been on, the changes she's seen me make. And it was impactful to me that she took the time to do that. And, I know that I can do it, and we can all do it together. So in Brené's wisdom, we either are going to, as leaders, spend time attending to fears and feelings and helping staff get there, or we waste the time later, right, in writing people up or talking about people or firing people or managing the turnover morale issues. So let's spend the time ahead of it, preventing and finding and fixing, which is what compliance is supposed to be about. And the business world is doing this. Here's the Harvard Business Review telling us that when people have high trust companies, they're doing better. There's less stress. There's more energy. They're more productive. They take fewer sick days. They're more engaged. They're more satisfied, and they're less burned out. So let's apply this in our industry. We should be leading, not following the pack. And that's that culture of ethics and compliance. It's so critical, right? That set of behaviors. You can smell an ethical compliant program when you walk into it. You can see it. People smiling, are they trusting, is it clean? You can really look at that and see it. So I challenge you to look at your organization from that lens of, are we doing these things? How do we see it, and where do we see it? And this is a great, I think this 12 sort of question for us in behavioral health is a good one. When we work in a good, healthy culture, we see it. People want to work there. The turnover is low. There's no, toxic leadership. We don't tolerate gossip. We work together as teams and leadership. It's a passion, not just a job. People are important. They're smiling. There's no fear. We're communicating, and change is welcome. Bringing something like Dare to Lead into the organization is welcome. The time is given because people want to be more courageous and strong. And again, just a reminder of those 4 skill sets. These are things that we can do on a daily basis. We can mess up and come back to. But when this is our focus, we spend less time focusing on the problems of ethics, and we're preventing it ahead of time. And this is, to me, what the journey looks like. We're building our whole hearts as individuals. I love that truck that I saw on my drive to a conference recently. People are our most valuable asset. Our staff who show up every day and do the work that they do have got to be the ones that we admire. And then again, that heart space where you're creating a space that staff can take care of themselves and each other, take a day off, whatever needs to be done. And I'll again start to close here with a picture of my son. He's number 44 there in the green. This is his football team that he was on last year. I am not a sports person, but I love him, and he looks cute in his uniform, so I love what he does. But I am inspired by this high school football team and the love for each other, their love for the coaches and the community. And I think the work and the dedication and the pre-planning that they put into being a team is amazing. I don't know that I've put in that much work in my field. So I want you to think about, what is your plan as you leave this session today? How am I going to be different as an individual? How am I going to support my team differently, and my organization? How do I help and support them in a new and different way? And this is a picture of me and my children again. This is probably taken about 8 years ago, just before my burnout really hit. But we were the first family in Salina, Texas to refuse the STAR test, because I don't believe in it. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's a measure of our children's worthiness. So it hit the Dallas Morning newspaper. It hit Channel 5 News. And I went to work that day, and it was a new job I was starting. My boss said, "I saw you on the news this morning, Maeve." And I thought, oh boy, he's going to know I'm kind of a troublemaker. And he said, "You know what? I wish you were my mom. I wish I had a mom that stood up for me and fought for me, because I had learning disabilities and I did really bad in school and always felt like I wasn't smart or good enough." We all need a mom like that to stand up and say, no, we're not doing this. We're going to do it differently. We're going to demand differences in ourselves, everyone around us, if we're going to make change. So the fact that we were able to refuse the test, and now it's a growing movement in North Texas and across all of Texas and across the states, hopefully we can get rid of things, testing and things that judge our kids, not on who they are, but what they do. So that's it. That's my closing. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, thank you for your time, and I've loved to share this with you.
Awesome. Maeve, thank you so much for doing this and presenting today. Just phenomenal information. And I know that the audience has absolutely loved it. We do have some time. Are you able to pull up the Q&A section on your computer?
Okay. That's not a question she was answering. Let's see. If people are asking for a copy of the PowerPoint, I'm happy to send a PDF. Just send me your email or connect with me. And I'm happy to send it, as I said. Recently, someone suggested to their management that they should hold regular debriefing clinician support groups. The clinical manager laughed in my face. How can I present this in a way? Sorry, I lost it. How can I present it in a way to better explain the need to prevent secondary trauma? Great question. It is hard to get people to see the value in this. What I have found to be helpful is to start to introduce the concept of resilience and brave leadership. Brené's work is obviously transformational, and maybe suggest
Hey, for some reason, the audio is not coming in very clearly.
Introducing the information slowly. What I also found is I would just start sharing how it impacted my life differently.
Hey, Dave, can you hear me okay out there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Take it up
Okay.
But if Dave's glitching, maybe she can't hear you. Kind of talk to her.
Yep. Hey guys, well, look, we apologize. It's one of those things with a virtual event like this that we're doing one-off, and sometimes there can be some technical difficulties. But what I would encourage you guys to do is to please reach out to individually. You can find her on LinkedIn and on Facebook, but definitely reach out to
Can you
her.
hear me now?
No, it's difficult to hear right now, Maeve. Sorry about that. For some reason, it just went, whenever you started answering questions, it went a little,
I hear you.
you can hear me okay? So let's do this. We're gonna go ahead and close. Let me go through some of this information real quick in closing, and we'll, you can reach out to Maeve individually and we'll try to work out the audio kinks, okay? So I want to thank everybody for being a part of this today. I want to thank Foundations Recovery Network and Dreamscape Marketing for helping us put this event on. And please go to their websites and check them out as we go through this. We're here because of their generosity and the hard work into this.